So much of our common life is spent in seeking ways by which we may break the isolation and the solitariness and the loneliness of the individual life. There is within us the hunger for companionship and understanding, for the experience of free and easy access to the life of another, so that in the things which we must face, the enemies with which we must do battle, we shall not be alone. Sometimes this isolation is brought about because one by one life has eliminated from our world those who have won the right to companion us in our journey. Sometimes the isolation is due to evil things which we have done deliberately or against our conscious wills, rendering those around us afraid and injured, and we are alone. Sometimes the isolation is due to a demand which our hearts make upon ourselves. The right to be free from involvements. The right to experience detachment. The right to take the long, hard look in solitariness and in isolation. But whatever may be the cause, it is so very good to sit together in the quietness of this place in the midst of the congregation and feel each other's presence very near, and to sense the joint character of our quest and the mutual support by which we are sustained. And we thank Thee, our Father, that this is so. Thy rod and Thy staff, they comfort us. We thank Thee, O God. We thank Thee, our Father. I dreamt God took my soul to hell. Hell was a fair place, and the water of the lake was blue. I said to God, I like this place, and God said, you do? Birds sang, turf came to the water's edge, and trees grew from it. Away off among the trees, I saw beautiful women walking. Their clothes were of many delicate colors and clung to them, and they were tall and graceful and had yellow hair. Their robes trailed over the grass. They glided in and out among the trees, and over their heads hung yellow fruit like large pears of melted gold. And I said to God, this is very fair. I would go up and taste the fruit. And God said, wait. And after a while, I noticed a very fair woman pass. She looked this way and that way and drew down a branch, and it seemed that she kissed the fruit upon it softly and went on her way, and her dress made no rustle as she passed over the grass. And then I saw other and other women come, making no noise. Then I saw one woman come. She drew down the fruit, and when she'd looked it over to find a place, she put her mouth to it softly and went away. And then I said to God, what are they doing? And God said, they are poisoning. And I said, how? And God said, they touch the fruit with their lips. When they have made a tiny wound in it with their 4 teeth, they set in it that which is under their tongues. They close it with their lip that no man may see the place, and pass on. And I said to God, why do they do that? And God said, that another may not eat. And I said to God, but if they poison all the fruit, no one can eat. What do they gain? And God said, nothing. And I said, are they not afraid that they themselves may bite, where someone else has already bitten? And God said, yes, they are afraid. In hell, everybody is afraid. Then to the right among the trees were men working, and I said to God, I should like to go and work with those men. Hell must be a very fruitful place. The grass is so green. And God said, nothing grows in the garden they are making. We stood looking, and I saw the men working among the bushes, digging holes, but in the holes they set nothing. And when they had covered the holes with sticks and earth, each went away off and sat behind the bushes watching. And I noticed that as each walked, he set his foot down carefully, looking where he trod. And I said to God, what are they doing? And God said, they are making pitfalls into which their fellows may sink. And I said to God, why do they do it? And God said, because each man thinks that when his brother falls, he will rise. And I said to God, how will he rise? And God said, he will not rise. And I saw their eyes gleam from behind the bushes. And I said to God, are these men sane? And God said, no, they're not sane. There's no sane man in hell. The third component, I'm almost self-conscious in announcing this. Someone telephoned this morning, and I happened to answer the telephone at the office, and the person wanted to know what was my topic for today. A very nice, gentle voice, and I said, it is the third component. And there was a long, quiet moment. And then the voice recovered and said, thank you very much. Many years ago, a Dr. White wrote these words: when A and B are together in a relationship, if you made a sum of A and B, this would not total what A and B in a relationship amount to. Because, he said, there is a third component that must be included, and that component is the relationship between them. Now, this is the idea. Now, I'd like to do it in a different way today. I'd like to call your attention to 2 or 3 or 4 moments, vignettes, and then let you work at it. And I hope I will have restraint enough to let you work at it rather than working at it on your behalf. I had a dean in college, and we affectionately called him Big Boy. He was a man about 6 feet, 5 inches tall, with a wonderfully lumbering gait and a great, quiet face full of masculine affection. We loved him very much. And I remember one day when one of the men in the college had violated one of the important laws of the college, and the discipline committee had met, voted that he was not a good member of the community and that he should withdraw from the college. Everybody agreed that this was the only wise and effective or creative or even the only option that the committee had if the college were to remain intact. They notified this fellow, and I happened to meet him on the walk as he came out of the dormitory with his bag. His trunk had gone, and he was walking down to the corner to get the streetcar. We walked along together, and then when we came by the administration building, he bade me goodbye and he said, "I've got to go in here a minute." And I said, "What are you going in there to do?" He said, "I must go in to tell Big Boy goodbye, because I don't want him to feel that anything has happened between me and him, because as chairman of the discipline committee, he had to send me home." That's the first one. Now the second. Some of you are familiar with the name Kropotkin. Those of you who are newcomers will not recognize the name in this connection, but Kropotkin is the name of a dog which I had once upon a time. When Kropotkin was a puppy, an early adolescent, we found that he was not very obedient. He wouldn't respond to his name when he was under pressure on Bay State Road, so that it was necessary for us to send him to school. And we took him out to a kennel about 12, 14 miles from here. And when we walked into this little office of the kennel keeper, he said to me, "Why do you bring your dog here?" And I explained to him what I wanted. I wanted the dog to learn 2 or 3 simple things: how to stop when you ask him to, and and how to come when you call him and how to recognize his name even at a time of crisis. So he said, all right, I have been training dogs for 16 years, and when I see a dog, or when any kind of dog is exposed to me, he comes into a climate of acceptance. It doesn't matter whether he's old or young, bad, vicious. It doesn't matter what kind of dog he is. He's surrounded by this climate of acceptance. Now, he said, my experience is that it takes me 2 weeks to teach the dog to trust me. Now, if I can teach the dog to trust me, then after that, I can teach him anything else. I can make into a vicious attack dog the most introverted dog you've ever seen. But if I cannot teach him to trust me, then I can't teach him anything. So at the end of 2 weeks, I will call you and tell you to let the dog stay or to come and get him. The third. In 1926, one of the great teachers of religion, Dr. Edward Increase Bosworth of Oberlin College, Oberlin Graduate Divinity School, died. And a few days after his death, I went up on the campus. I saw a man cutting the lawn, mowing the lawn. I walked over to him and I said, we shall certainly miss Dr. Bosworth in the village. And he said, oh yes, but I don't think anyone will miss him quite as much as I shall miss him. Because during the years that I have been the janitor in Council Hall, removing the snow in the winter and cutting the grass in the summer, I have seen Dr. Bosworth walk 2 blocks around out of his way just to tell me good morning. I shall miss him in a way that is perhaps a little different from the way anyone else will miss him in the village. And now, this. And I hope you will, feel your way into this without embarrassment. About 10 years ago, I was on a train going from St. Louis to Cheyenne, Wyoming. I was riding some sort of eagle. I don't remember, either California Eagle or Eagle was the last name. I decided as the train pulled into the railway station in Kansas City that I would go in and have my dinner. And I took advantage of this moment when the train was standing still because this is a very rough ride. The train ran so fast. I walked in the dining room, and there was one seat near the door, one vacant seat table, and I sat. As I sat, I noticed a very beautiful little girl just across the aisle. She was about just beyond the talking stage, and her eyes followed the waiters as they went up and down in the diner. And then presently, she looked and she saw me. And she said to her mother in a very high voice, "Mommy, there is a zigaboo sitting down." And her mother said, "Shh." "Mommy, there is a zigaboo sitting down." By this time, all conversation in the diner had stopped. Everything was frozen, and into that chaotic moment, the steward, who was down at the end of the diner, walked the length of the diner, came to my table, and he said, into this silence, "How delighted I am to see you again. It's been a long time since you've ridden with us." And he shook my hand, and I shook his hand, and he went back to his place, and life moved again. The steward had never seen me before. He didn't know me. The third component. We have many contacts in the world. Each one of us has. In our homes, our families, communities. But again and again, there are contacts without fellowship. Contacts without the third component. And contacts without fellowship tend to lead to an understanding that is unsympathetic. Sort of thing you experience when you walk into a man's office and he looks at you hard and you wonder whether the third button on your shirt is open, but you dare not look. That cold, unsympathetic, hard, callous, understanding nevertheless, but hard. It isn't ignorance. No, it's understanding, but it's hard. It's cold. It's impersonal. It strips you. And this profanes your personality. And unsympathetic understanding tends to express itself in the exercise of a will that's sick, a sick will, an ill will, we call it. And an ill will is a very contagious thing. An ill will caught, dramatized, for instance, in a human being is what we mean by hate walking on the earth. And the reverse of this is true. Contacts with fellowship, whether it is within the family or out of the family, leads to an understanding that is sympathetic. And this is very important to remember, because sometimes we assume that because this person organically is my brother, or because biologically this man is my father and this woman is my mother, that the relationship between us is a relationship of mother and child, but it may not be at all if the third component is lacking. Now, contacts with fellowship lead to an understanding that is sympathetic, that is warm, that is gracious, that surrounds you with a climate of felicity. So that into that climate you may venture forth with your little life and its little secret and its little burden, its little anxieties. You may expose your life in a climate like that and know that it will not be violated. Because whatever the other person sees will be seen with sympathy, with tenderness, with understanding, with a dimension of kindness that is creative and restorative and redemptive. Now it follows then that the third component may be a gift, There are some people, I think, who have what may be called the gift of intimacy. Just as any other gift, they have a way of moving quietly into the life of others and watering their roots and making them blossom. It's a way they have. It's a gift. That's true for some of us. But for the most part, the third component is something that we must work at. It takes imagination. It personalizes even impersonal institutions. I remember reading the other day about a doctor who was describing what he used to do in his hospital in San Francisco 30 years ago. He discovered that the people in the hospital early in the morning was a bad time. Just when you're waking up and you don't know quite where you are and life is difficult. So he hit upon the idea of getting the trustees of the hospital to secure the services of a beautiful Chinese girl who dressed in beautiful Chinese clothing and who had the kind of memory that would make it possible for her to get each patient's name, so that the first thing in the morning, even before you quite were aware of your awareness, she opened the door, called you by name, and offered you a little cup of coffee. Now, you may not be a coffee drinker, but it didn't make any difference, you see. This said to the isolated, lonely, frightened patient that the hospital had heart, that it was exercising this third component as the institution related to the individual. Now, this takes imagination. It takes discipline. It takes caring. One has to work at it. Now, it is a word of religion. And I speak now in the language of our text, of the scripture that was read, that God is that way with reference to us. Who are they that have come through great tribulation? The writer of Revelation says, these are the people God, God. We read this hurriedly, but listen to it. God will wipe every tear from their eyes. Do you know how it feels when you weep and someone wipes the tear? This ultimately breathless moment of caring. Now, in the Revelation, the writer says that this is what God will do. God himself, the creator of worlds, will gentle you by wiping the tears from your eyes. This is the way James Weldon Johnson describes it in his paraphrasing of the funeral sermon. I want to read a part of it to you. Day before yesterday morning, God was looking down from his great high heaven, looking down on all his children, and his eyes fell on Sister Caroline, tossing on her bed of pain. And God's big heart was touched with pity, with the everlasting pity. And God said, go down, death, go down to Savannah, Georgia, down in Yamacraw, and find Sister Caroline. She's borne the burden and heat of the day. She's labored long in my vineyard. She's tired. She's weary. Go down and bring her to me. And Death didn't say a word, but he loosed the reins on his pale white horse, and he clamped the spurs to his bloodless sides. And out and down he rode through heaven's pearly gates, past suns and moons and stars. On Death rode, and the foam from his horse was like a comet in the sky. On Death rode, leaving the lightning's flash behind. Straight on down he came. While we were watching round her bed, she turned her eyes and looked away. She saw what we couldn't see. She saw old Death. She saw old Death coming like a falling star. But Death didn't frighten Sister Caroline. He looked to her like a welcome friend. And she whispered to us, I'm going home. And she smiled and closed her eyes. And Death took her up like a baby, and she lay in his icy arms, but she didn't feel any chill. And Death began to ride again. Up beyond the evening star, out beyond the morning star, into the glittering light of glory, onto the great white throne. And there he laid Sister Caroline on the loving breast of Jesus. And Jesus took his own hand and wiped away her tears, and he smoothed the furrows from her face, and the angels sang a little song, and Jesus rocked her in his arms, and kept saying, take your rest now, take your rest. Take your rest. Weep not, weep not. She's not dead. She's resting in the bosom of Jesus. All the theology may be way off. Who cares? The experience of the third component is the thing we must have, or we perish and die. If we cannot get it, we cannot find a way of life that is worth living, whatever else we have. The relationship between you and another. This is the third component. What is it like? You know. Perhaps the other person knows. And God knows. Journey with us, our Father, in the way that we take. Leave us not alone in the desolation of our spirit, but reassure us and steady us that we may walk courageously on the earth by the light in the sky. Dismiss us with thy spirit and grant unto us thy peace.